Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah Birch, and I just want to quickly thank you all for your love and support on my first ever true crime video, which was last week. I covered the case of Carrie Farver and David Krupa, and honestly, I got really great feedback from people and a few helpful pieces of advice, and I really appreciate it. So I just wanted to start off this video by saying that. I don't really want to dilly-dally too much more. I know my intro was super long last time, so let's get right into the case. But before you do, like, share, subscribe, comment, all of those things to join this new adventure that I'm going on and show some support because I am literally starting from ground zero. So today we're going to talk about the case of Dalia and Michael Dippolito. This case takes place in the USA's craziest, most chaotic state, I would argue, good old Florida, specifically the city of Boynton Beach, Florida. Boynton Beach is a city in Palm Beach County in Florida, and it's about 50 miles north of Miami, just in case you're wondering. This case surrounds a man named Michael Dippolito, who was born on the 18th of December, 1970 in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, his upbringing, there's not a ton known, but it was a little rough around the edges as both of his parents struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. So he ended up being taken in by his grandmother and living with her. As is so often the case with these type of situations, Michael actually grew up to develop his own dependencies on drug and alcohol, and he was actually put into rehab by the time that he was 15. After he got out of rehab, he went on to be sober for 5.5 years, which is a massive accomplishment, but unfortunately he did relapse in his early 20s, and actually, I've heard this debated in different sources, but it was reported that he started dealing drugs himself, specifically crack cocaine. Side note, I just want to put this out here now. Michael low-key looks like an exact combination of Ronnie, Mike the Situation, and DJ Pauly D from Jersey Shore, all blended into one person, and I can't unsee it. So at the age of 26, Michael moved to Florida, and not long after he moved there, he actually was arrested. He apparently tried to solicit sex from an undercover female police officer and was sentenced to a short stint for this, but he was eventually released. After his release, he met a woman named Carrie, and the two got together and eventually had a baby together. And you will literally not hear any more about this baby for the rest of the story. It's kind of strange, but apparently he had a baby. Honestly, there's not much information about Michael's life in general. In this specific stage of his life, you're going to get tons of information later on. But him and Karen eventually split up. And not too long after, he became romantically involved with another woman whose name was Maria. During the time he was with Maria, he kind of started to fall back into his criminal ways a little bit because he got involved with a company that was essentially offering investment services to people, but it was all completely fraudulent, and they were just essentially stealing money from people and conning hardworking people out of money. I just have zero respect for people like this who do this, and these scams are becoming more and more common with AI and stuff, so it's just something on a little side note, just something to be aware of. Michael actually started his own quote-unquote telemarketing company and was using the money he was making from this to start funding a very lavish lifestyle for himself. So Michael was definitely a fan of the finer things in life. He liked nice cars and stays in hotels and jewelry. He was a man of means at this point in his life. Whether he came by those means ethically is a different conversation. However, karma caught up with him in 2002, and Michael was arrested for unlicensed telemarketing communications fraud and grand theft. He was released in 2005 after 2 years in prison, and he knew he would have to drastically change his lifestyle in order to stay out of prison in the future. He was actually sentenced to 28 years of probation after he was released from prison. So that means he would have a parole officer checking in with him, and there would be a lot of different restrictions to what he could and couldn't do for the next 28 years to ensure that he stayed out of prison. He was also ordered to pay back $220,000 in restitutions as part of this probation deal. And somehow, through all of this, Maria proved herself to be a loyal lady, and she stood by Michael's side. And the two actually moved in together once he got out of prison. However, this did not last long because Maria left Michael when she discovered that he was back to using substances. And rightfully so, she decided that she didn't want to get dragged down into this spiral that Michael was probably going to go down, so she left. This seemed to motivate Michael to get his shit together, and he actually got sober, joined AA, started seeking out support from people, and he was doing all of this in an effort to get Maria back, which honestly worked. Once the two rekindled their romance, Michael continued on this kind of self-improvement journey, and he actually got a legitimate job this time at a marketing company. Michael had big financial ambitions for himself. I don't think he's the type of guy who would ever be happy with just being someone else's employee and having a fixed sort of income every year. So he actually once again decided to start up his own company, and this was a media marketing company called Mad Media. However, Michael did it all completely legally this time. As far as I'm aware, there was nothing sketchy going on with Mad Media. By all accounts, things were going well for Michael in his life, both financially and personally. He was staying all clear with his probation officer. He was working on his business. He was married. But things would definitely take a drastic turn once a new woman was introduced into his life. In October of 2008, a woman named Dalia Muhammad completely knocked Michael right off his socks. When Michael was out of town, he proved himself to be a complete cliche of a human being and ordered an escort to spend the night with him. And who was this escort? None other than Dalia Muhammad. He basically said immediately there was this insane spark between them and this sexual chemistry that he could not deny. He'd never felt anything like it before. Sorry guys, I have my sparkling water here and it's in the shot. I just realized it's been in the shot the whole time. So I'm going to take a sip and then I'll move it out of the shot. Dalia honestly was a gorgeous woman, okay? I'm going to input some photos of her here. Keep in mind, she's got the whole early 2010 kind of Y2K vibes going on, so cut her some slack with that. But Dalia had this beautiful darker skin and long, silky, dark brown hair and these big eyes and really, really big, juicy lips. Not to mention, Dalia was not his wife, so Michael was hooked. Michael was thinking with his other head, if you know what I mean. So he decided to book her again the next night. He did not want to waste any time. He had to see this woman again. And Dalia actually didn't even end up charging him for the next night because apparently she wanted to see him again too. I don't know what kind of magical powers Dalia has. I actually would like to know, to be quite honest. But she somehow got Michael. I don't know if she asked him or if he just did it in his own accord. But Michael left his wife, Maria, his longtime loyal partner who stood by him through all this stuff. He left his wife after just 2 meetings with Dalia. That's all it took. He wanted to pursue a future with Dalia, and that was that. So he made the rash decision to leave his wife and move out to pursue Dalia. Michael only waited 2 months before proposing to Dalia, and when he did get down on one knee, he did so with a $26,000 ring. Honestly, props to him. I respect a man who gets a big rock for his lady. But I'm sure you can already sense lots of red flags popping up left, right, and center. He probably thought to himself, finally, after everything I've been through and all the mistakes I've made and all the failed relationships, this is my gift from the universe, this beautiful woman, and everything will be just amazing from here on out. But how much can you really know about someone in 2 months, right? I'm sure Michael wished he took a little bit more time before rushing into this marriage to get to know Dalia, because things are about to get really crazy. So first, let's get a little bit into Dalia's backstory. So she was born on the 18th of October, 1982 in New York City to an Egyptian father and Peruvian mother. She, her parents, and her 2 siblings actually moved to Boynton Beach in Florida when she was 13 years old, and she went on to complete her high school degree there and graduated high school in 2000. There's not really that much known about the interpersonal dynamics of Dalia's family, although I kind of would like to know more because I wonder if it would explain a few things. But all I know is that apparently her father was allegedly unfaithful to her mother, and the two ended up divorcing. I believe their parents divorced when Dalia was 18, and Dalia pretty much took her mother's side like that and actually eventually lost contact with her father altogether. She remained very close with her siblings and her mother, and they all lived in Boynton Beach, Florida. Dalia wasn't really sure when she got out of high school what she wanted to do, so she actually started a career in sex work. She started off working in different massage parlors and doing a little bit of escorting, and she actually moved to California for a time. And when she was there, she actually started dating a man who she got married to, but then ended up divorcing not long after. However, she didn't leave this divorce empty-handed. No. She left with a $40,000 wedding ring, a Mercedes, and a good chunk of his money. Dalia knows how to get what she wants from men, let's just say that. But she ended up taking all of these assets and money that she got from this failed marriage, and she actually moved back to Florida to be closer to her family. So she left California to move back to Florida. And that's kind of when things really start to kick off. So Dalia actually went to school to get her degree as a realtor, or her certificate as a realtor, but she was also still moonlighting as an escort on the side. And this is where she met, through her escorting services, Michael Dippolito. So as you can tell, Dalia and Michael respectively both kind of lived these like turbulent, fast-paced, sort of like passionate lives. Like they kind of just made decisions on a whim, and they like didn't necessarily want to stick with one thing or like one path too long. Like they were, to me anyway, when I was reading about them, like they seemed like two peas in a pod, and it almost feels as though they met their match with each other. And the way that Michael would go on to describe their relationship was that it was very much like a sexually compatible, animalistic, passionate relationship. So swept up in the stages of this romantic bliss, Michael actually bought a townhouse for the two of them to live in with her two dogs, and they were going to kind of lay the foundations for their new life together. And Dalia actually apparently was the realtor on this sale, so she sort of facilitated him buying a house for her. I'm not a realtor. For some reason, that feels a bit icky to me, like a little bit professionally unethical. And we're going to get into professional ethics a little later on in this video. But if you're a realtor, let me know. Is that allowed? Is that not allowed? Like, I'm curious. After only 5 days after Michael and Maria's divorce was finalized, Michael and Dalia went to go get married. They tied the knot at the Palm Beach courthouse. And honestly, I can only imagine the thoughts and feelings that were going through Maria's head during all of this. So as they settled into married life, you know, it seemed like they were getting along quite well. I'm sure they were making use of their marital bedroom, but they also realized that they had a shared love and passion for reality TV. So they both loved watching reality TV together. It turns out they actually both wanted to be on reality TV one day. They had like a shared ambition of wanting to become reality TV stars. And this was honestly kind of like, this is 2009, so like we're talking Jersey Shore. We're talking like the heyday of reality TV. Like The Bachelor was popping off. Like this was before reality TV became super sanitized and like produced like it is now. I miss those days. So, you know, with their two dogs and their reality TV and their crazy passionate sex, it seemed like the two of them were off to the races with their marriage. So Michael began actually working from home most days and was just grinding and trying to make money and trying to stay clean and sober. Meanwhile, Dalia is just being a trophy wife, and I'm not saying that with any judgment whatsoever. Going to get tan, she's going to the tanning bed, she's getting her nails done, she's going to the gym, she's going to hang out with her girls. Like she's just, you know, using her husband's money, living her best life, taking care of herself, having fun. At the time, it seemed to work for Dalia and it seemed to work for Michael. He was definitely the breadwinner in the relationship, and she was happy for that to be the case. I do believe she was still working like very much part-time as a realtor, but it's not like she was like busting her ass every day to go to work and make money. Like she didn't really need to. Michael was pretty well off financially. However, one morning on March of 2009, Michael's workday was weirdly disrupted when a bunch of squad cars and police officers pulled up to his house. Apparently, the police had received 3 separate anonymous tips saying that Michael was selling drugs out of his home. This was a very shocking accusation to Michael, as he had been sober for years and, you know, he certainly was not selling drugs out of his house. So he told the police investigators, he said, go ahead, search the house, tear it up and down. I don't care. Like, I did not do this. I don't know where these accusations are coming from, but like, I want to clear my name. So they did a full-scale search of the house, top to bottom, and they didn't find anything. On the 16th of March, police received another tip from a woman who claimed that she had seen someone selling drugs outside of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and they were selling drugs from their car. And this car was a gray Chevy Tahoe SUV. So when they pull up and they find the SUV, they realize that it belongs to, can you guess, Michael Dippolito. So they go up to him and they say, hey man, we received a tip that you're selling drugs out of your car, like da-da-da. And Michael's like, what the hell is going on? He's like, I'm literally just here for the weekend with my wife. Dalia and Michael were there just doing a staycation at the Ritz-Carlton for the weekend. It was like only like 6 miles from their house or something. So they clearly just wanted to go like spend a romantic weekend together. They'd only been married at this point for like a month. So he said, once again, go ahead, check my car. I don't care. Pull the whole thing apart. You'll find no drugs. And he was right. They didn't find any drugs. Fast forward a little while later to the 29th of March, a narcotics team was actually called to the City Place shopping mall in Palm Beach because they too had received a tip that Michael Dippolito was selling drugs out of his car. Once again, this was the gray Chevy Tahoe SUV. So they find Michael and Dalia walking around the mall, minding their business, and they say, "We got to go search your car. We've received this tip." And Michael is seriously so fed up and annoyed at this point. He's like, "I've been sober for 6 years. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's like someone's setting me up. I don't know what's going on." But he's like, "Go on, go ahead, search my car." But this time they actually do find a small little quantity of drugs. They find a bit of cocaine that is inside a cigarette box, tucked kind of beneath the spare tire in the SUV. So Michael gets taken in for questioning, and he is like pleading with the officers, and he's like, "I swear I have been sober for 6 years. Someone has planted this on me." If you check the call logs, like, people have been making false tips about me and accusations about me for like this whole month. This is an ongoing thing. And I don't know whether it's the fact that there was like a bunch of false tips already made, or whether Michael was truly just like so charismatic and believable and genuine, but they let him go. They're like, "We believe you, brother. You can go home. It's fine. No harm, no foul." And like, I feel like that was very lucky. No, not to get too political, but maybe if Michael's skin color was a different color, this would not have been the case. One thing you will realize throughout this entire video is Michael always seems to find trouble easily. He always lands himself in some sort of trouble, some sort of hot water. But he actually also seems to have like this lucky streak, like this bubble of protection around him, because nothing that bad actually ever really happens to him. Like, he always seems to get off somewhat scot-free, considering what could have happened instead. Just keep that in mind as we continue with the case. So after this strange situation with the drugs, once again, the police were called to the home of Dalia and Michael Dippolito because multiple neighbors had called saying that they had heard screaming, violent sort of screaming, and thumping noises at the home of the couple. So they suspected domestic abuse, so they went over to check it out. Apparently, one witness claimed that they had seen Michael drag Dalia back into the home by her hair. But when police show up and they talk to Michael and Dalia, they both say, "It's true, we got in a fight and we did raise our voices, but nothing violent happened, nothing physical happened, and, we're sorry and we will keep it down." And so that was that. Neither of them pressed charges, and the police went on their way. So Michael was kind of starting to get, rightfully so, freaked out by all of this. It really seemed like someone was kind of out to get him, or someone was trying to spook him. And because Michael had gone to prison and Michael had conned a few people in his past, he started to wonder if maybe someone from his past was coming to seek revenge on him or something like that. He may have not been like the best guy in the world, but one thing about Michael is he's not a dumb guy, and he knew that something was fishy. Michael actually said at this point that he kind of just wished someone would just do something already and get it over with, like get violent with him or attack him, so that he could at least put a face with the name of who was doing this, because he was sick of all these little like breadcrumbing hints, And on the morning of August 5th, 2009, someone did come after Michael. So Dalia headed off to the gym, just like she did every morning, around 6 a.m., and she was working out, doing her thing, when she received a call at around 6:50 a.m. This call was from a Detective Sergeant Frank Ramsey from the Boynton Beach Police. And he told her she needed to come home right away. There was no time to lose. She needed to come home because something had happened. And I feel like even just reading that, I have a pit in my stomach, because when you're getting a call before 7 a.m., especially from a detective, it's not good.
Ma'am, I need to talk to you. It's very urgent when you come home. It involves your husband. There's been an incident. Okay? Can you come right back to your residence, please?
Yeah, I'm leaving right now. Is it okay?
Ma'am, I'll tell you everything you need to know when you get here, okay?
So Dalia rushes home. She's like speeding through the streets, and she pulls up to her neighborhood, and there's tons of detective cars and squad cars and police tape and everything everywhere. So she like runs towards the detectives. So they kind of grab her on the shoulders to steady her, and she seems like she's like bracing herself for bad news. And they say, "We're so sorry to tell you this, ma'am, but your husband has," and like before they can even finish the sentence, she's like, "Ah!" She bursts into tears, and she kind of falls onto the shoulder of the police officer speaking to her, and she's just screaming like, "No, no, no." And she's like sobbing, and she's hysterical.
Your husband, Michael? Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, ma'am, he's been killed.
No.
He's been killed, ma'am. I'm sorry.
No, he's not.
Listen.
No.
Try to calm down.
No.
Listen, right now we need to get you to the station. Okay? Does he have enemies? Is there anyone that would want to hurt him? Okay, who would want to hurt him? Witnesses, Detective Yopi, I need you to take her to the station. I can't. Ma'am, go with these detectives. If you want to help your husband, okay? If you want to help your husband, you need to go to the station with these gentlemen.
I mean, she just received the worst news of her life, that her husband, Michael, had been murdered. So they eventually tell her, because she's asking about her dogs, who's going to take care of her dogs. And a lot of people would make fun of her about that later on. But honestly, that would be my first concern too. Like, where are my dogs? Are my dogs okay? Who's taking care of my dogs? No, I think that's a valid question. Are my dogs okay? And they said, your dogs are fine. We have someone taking care of them, but you need to come in with us to the police station. We have questions for you. We need your help to figure this out. So she goes to police headquarters and they sit her down in kind of a separate room, an interrogation room of sorts, but the door's open. And they're just talking to her and asking her, and they say that her husband was shot twice and, was murdered in the home. And then they bring in someone who's handcuffed, and they say, this is our main suspect here. Do you recognize this man? We think this is the man who did it. We saw him running out of the house. And Dalia looks at him, and she's like, nope, I don't know him. And he has his head down, and he kind of looks nervous, and he's like, look up, look at her. And he's the detective is telling the suspect to look at Dalia so she can identify him. And she's like, nope, I don't know this man. I don't know this man.
Know her? Put your head up and look at her. Put your head up.
I've never seen her.
What were you doing coming out of her house? Came out here.
So it seems they have a suspect here. They found someone running out of the house, but the motive still kind of remains unclear. So before we go any further, I think it's important to back this all up a little bit and give you a little more backstory. This next section involves a lot of finances and financial transactions and a lot of numbers. So I'm going to do my best to get through it in a coherent way, but just bear with me. So 2 weeks after Dalia and Michael get married, they kind of decide that they should probably look into getting Michael's probation terminated early because they wanted to live their lives. They wanted to travel. They wanted to have fun. They didn't want to have to worry about a probation officer watching their every move. So they go to Michael's lawyer, and Michael's lawyer says it's not really that complicated. All they need to do is pay off their remaining restitution, which at that point was $191,000, and just kind of stay out of trouble. So Michael's like, okay, cool. And Dalia's supportive of this. And she says, I will give you the $91,000 and you pay the $100,000 and we'll just give them one check to give to the lawyer to pay off the restitution. So he's like, that's great. So he goes, I will send you in transfers, separate quantities over the next however many weeks. I will send you the full $100,000. And once you have all of it, you write a check and you give it to our lawyer. And then we're good. Side note, imagine having that much money just chilling in your bank account. Imagine just being okay, so I'll give the $100,000, you give the $90,000. Okay, perfect, we're good. I can't even fathom that. I know some people have that much money out there. I just can't relate to them. So throughout the next few months, Michael does what he says. He keeps sending Dalia money in little increments, $6,000 here, $7,000 here, which eventually adds up to the $100,000. And Dalia apparently gives this check and she gives him a receipt to show. But the receipt's a bit strange because it says that the check came from the Cayman Islands, and it also said that the payment had been reversed, so it wasn't successful. So while Michael should have been really relieved at this time and cracking a beer open because he finally had paid off his restitution, he was more confused than ever. Okay, I thought this was handled. It's clearly not. So he asked Dalia to get to the bottom of it, and she's like, okay, I don't know what happened. I'll get to the bottom of it, da-da-da. So a week later, Dalia gives Michael a cashier's check for the $191,000. So Michael goes to bring this check to his lawyer, and literally as he's handing it off, Dalia kind of grabs it, and she's like, no, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this. She goes, I want to back out. I want my $91,000 back. And Michael's like, okay. So he complies. So apparently he gets $140,000 in cash out of his safety deposit box. So he goes to pay Dalia off for the amount that she originally contributed. So he gives her $90,000 or $91,000 in cash, and he takes the check and he goes to take it to the lawyer. The check that was originally supposed to be given to the lawyer before Dalia kind of freaked out. When he looks at this check, he realizes that it wasn't from Dalia. It was from Dalia's friend's husband, a man named Eric Tao. Another thing about this check was it was not for $190,000. It was actually for $191, which is a little more in my budget, if you know what I mean. And so Michael's like, what the hell? So he talks to Dalia, and Dalia's like, I don't know what happened. Like, I was with Eric earlier, and maybe he switched to checks, or maybe he got mixed up. Like, I'll figure it out. So as a final game plan, they all kind of coordinate, and Eric, who is Dalia's friend's husband, decides to cut another check for Michael for the $191,000 to pay off the restitution. And they agree. Michael will hand over the cash that he just got from the safety deposit box and hand it over to Eric, and then he could pay the remaining amount later on over the course of however many months. So they all agree on this, and they're like, okay, this seems like a good solution. So when they go to give the check to his lawyer, he finds out that his lawyers actually fired him because his lawyer had been hearing all of this malarkey, all this back and forth, up and down. This check's here, the Cayman Islands, this is bounced, this person. And his lawyer honestly was like, this is too much drama for me, I'm out. So they have to find a new lawyer. So when Michael goes to this new lawyer to give him the check cannot be taken because the check was written out to the name of the old lawyer who had previously fired Michael. Are you still with me? Because I've lost myself, so it'd be amazing if you're still with me. So then Michael goes back to Eric and is like, okay, this check didn't work. It was the wrong name written on it, so I need another check for the $191,000. And Eric says, sorry, buddy, I can't help you. All my accounts have been frozen because of all this suspicious activity going on, so I can't help you. So a few months after that, Dalia comes to Michael and she says, I found a new lawyer and I really think you should consult him on this. So Michael goes to speak to this lawyer that Dalia found. And the lawyer says, I think the first thing you should do is sign over the deed for your townhouse to Dalia's name. That way there will be like no financial implications with you and the townhouse. Everything will fall on Dalia. Or gave some sort of weird reasoning why he should do this. And he did. He didn't really hesitate. He just signed over the townhouse to Dalia. I don't really understand why he did this, to be honest, but I guess the lawyer must have made a compelling case. So if you haven't picked up yet on like how suspicious all of this seems and how suspicious Dalia seems with all of this check chaos and getting all these different people involved who shouldn't really be involved, then your suspicions are correct. So it turns out that throughout most of this, Dalia had actually been meeting up with her ex-boyfriend, a man named Mohammed Shahada. She originally contacted him on the 17th of March 2009, which would have been just over a month after they got married. She was already reaching out to her ex-boyfriend. And when they met up, she was telling him about how Michael was abusive and she wasn't happy. And this conversation somehow turned into her asking him if either he would kill her husband or if he knew someone who would kill her husband. And Mohammed immediately was like, no, what the heck are you talking about? This conversation's over. Kind of just like called her out on this insane behavior. So he went straight to the police. Apparently he reported that he had heard that Michael was abusing Dalia, but then he also mentioned what she said about potentially hiring a hitman. So they actually had an idea to start working with Mohammed as a secret informant and said, okay, next time you meet with her, we're going to put a wire on you and we're going to hook you up with some cameras and we'll just see what she says. And if she says anything super incriminating, like we'll have it as evidence. So Mohammed agrees. So when Mohammed organizes another meeting with Dalia, he's like playing into her a little bit more this time. And he's like, okay, like I think I have a hitman for you. I think I have someone, but like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Keep in mind, he has a pinhole camera in the back seat and a wire on recording this entire conversation. You know, he asks her, why can't you just get a divorce? And Dalia's like, I can't get a divorce. The people he knows, like he could set people after me or people could come after me. Like it's too dangerous. I can't divorce him. Like I just need him gone. He either needs to go back to prison for life or he needs to be dead. So with the camera recording away, Mohammed agrees that he will find a hitman for her, but he needs three things first. He needs $1,200 for a gun. He needs a clear, crisp photo of Michael so that the hitman can identify the target. And he needs a photo and the address of the house where Michael will be. So Dalia agrees and she gives him all of these things, doesn't even think twice about it. But she tells him all of this needs to be done by the 5th of August. Like that is when I want him dead by.
Okay, well, I'm trying to say is this guy's a professional. It's not all he does is get it done. That's it. Right. I know him, you know, like he's good at it. Honestly, you're worth seriously, killing over that much money?
It's not even over Like, it's not even about money.
His mom is not gonna get suspicious of you or anything like
Why
that?
me? Like, you know what? Telling somebody, you know, nobody's gonna be able to point a finger at me. I have a picture of him right now. You're sure everything else is okay?
Yeah.
You're sure?
Yo, what more sure can you want? You're planning a murder. Come on, stop.
It's abundantly clear in this video, as you could see, that Dalia doesn't have a hint of doubt, hesitation, remorse, anything. She's pretty gung-ho on the idea of killing her husband. And it even seems like Mohammed's kind of trying to, like, coax a motive out of her, like maybe get to the bottom of it. He's like, is this about the money? And she's just like, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. And honestly, like, I don't know what it was about then. Like, it seemed like all she was after was his money. So if she's claiming it's not about the money, then maybe she's claiming it's about the abuse. That was never really cleared up. And he asked her, are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure? He asked her multiple times, and she ends up saying, I am 5,000% sure that this is what needs to be done. So on August 3rd, 2009, Dalia goes for her first meeting with the hitman, and she gets into his car. And of course, there's also video and audio footage of this, because the hitman was an undercover Boynton Beach police officer. They're having a conversation, negotiating prices, negotiating timelines, and they agree that the hitman will do this job for $7,000. So she needs to pay a little bit now as a deposit, and then she can pay the rest, you know, at a certain point in the future, and they can negotiate that later. And Dalia, in a way, almost seems to be flirting with him a little bit. Like, she's like, you know, I know everyone thinks I'm this, like, pretty cute, innocent girl, but I'm really tough. Like, I'm capable of this type of thing. And it's, like, so cringy to watch. But
A lot tougher than what I look. I know you look and you're like, oh, what a cute little girl, whatever. You know, but I'm not.
you can almost see, like, a different persona come over her when she's in the presence of a man. It's like she really feels like she can work over these men with her charm. And I kind of get that vibe a little bit from this video. So they're talking about money, and Dalia actually has this great idea. Dalia's like, well, you know what? In a few days, Michael's actually going to the bank to get $10,000 out to give to his business partner. So why don't you just kill him at the bank and pretend it's a robbery and just take that money and then you're paid? So just to clarify, not only is Dalia hiring a hitman to kill her husband in cold blood, but she's also finagled away so that Michael will be paying for his own murder. So the hitman, aka Boynton Beach police officer, says, you know, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, it's too out in the public. I'm going to get caught if I do that. I need to kill him at the house. I will kill him at the house on the morning of August 5th. And they create a plan. Like, you go to the gym at this time, leave the door open, disable the alarms, and I'll do the rest. And Dalia's like, great, okay, we have a deal. So obviously, with all of this evidence stacked up, they have audio footage, video footage. I mean, what more could they really need at this point? A blatant confession and explanation from Dalia from multiple different sources. They take her into custody, and she's sitting with her hair looking ratchet as hell in this little blue tank top, and her hands are handcuffed behind her back, and she's sitting, I think, in the same interrogation room that she was in before, but now the tables have turned. So they basically explained to her that this whole thing has been set up essentially from the beginning, since she first went to go meet with Mohammed, to catch her in the act. So they said the hitman was fake. Mohammed was in on this. It was a massive sting operation. We've recorded everything. And they tell her she's arrested for the solicitation of first-degree murder of her husband, Michael Dippolito. And she is just completely feigning innocence. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, I didn't murder my husband. Like, da-da. And they're like, honey, your husband's alive. He's in the next room. And she's like, what? No, he's not. And they're like, Michael, come in here. And Michael has like the most triumphant, smug look on his face. And that man walks into the room. He's like, hey, babe, I'm here. And Dalia's like probably shitting her pants.
You're going to jail today for solicitation of murder. You're under arrest. That's an undercover police officer. We filmed everything that you did, recorded everything that you did. You're going to jail for solicitation of first-degree murder of your husband.
I didn't do anything.
Did you hear what I just told you?
I heard what you said, but I didn't.
Everything, listen to me. Everything has been recorded. You were photographed in the convertible when you sat in this car in the front of CVS. What do you want to do?
So that morning, when all of the plans were laid between the hitman and Dalia, Michael actually wakes up to the sound of police officers like knocking on his door trying to wake him up. And the police officers are like, okay, man, like you got to come with us. Like you're not in trouble, but just come with us. So he does. And he's really confused, but he puts his shirt on and hops in the car to go to the police office. And they are explaining to him that this is what's happened. Your wife has been trying to kill you. She's been meeting with a hitman. She's been negotiating prices. She's been stealing money from you. They show him the proof. They show him the videos of her meeting with Muhammad, the videos of her meeting with the hitman, and he sees it all for himself. And you know what he says? I'm not really that surprised. Brutal. They're not even 6 months into marriage yet. And he says, she's been stealing money from me and all this weird shit's been going on, and it's really not that surprising. And when Michael's standing there looking at her kind of from the other room, Dalia goes into just this like desperate mode, and she's like, babe, listen to me, come here. And she's like demanding him like a dog, like, come here. And he's like, no, bitch, like, no, you tried to kill me. And it's kind of funny, to be honest. I mean, this whole thing is so messy, but like it's also kind of funny at the same time because no one was murdered, no one was harmed.
Come here, please. Come here.
Mike, come here, please. Come here.
3 words to describe Dalia. Liar.
Honestly, sometimes when I don't get my way or when I'm like being annoying on purpose, I'll be like, babe, like to my boyfriend, you know, like, babe, come on, babe. And like she's doing that for real. But her hands are behind her back and she's like hunched over and she's like, Michael's having none of it. Like if you look at Michael's face, he looks repulsed by her, like disgusted by her. But they take her from the police office to out into the car to get into the car to go to the jail. And there's news stations everywhere like swarming her. So there obviously must have been a tip off to the local news, but that's besides the point. And she's just saying to everyone who she passes, I didn't do it. I didn't do anything. So even still, despite the fact that, you know, she saw Michael walk into the room, despite the fact that she's been presented with this whole sting operation, she's still maintaining her innocence. So when Dalia was booked into the county jail, her first phone call was to Michael. And Michael actually answered the phone because in his head, he was like, this is going to be entertaining, if nothing else. Obviously, he was not going to fall for Dalia's excuses, but he kind of wanted to hear what she had to say.
Just give me time so I can talk to you. What did it say? I saw it. I heard it. I saw what you saw and I heard what you heard. Okay, what said you wanted to have me killed? I heard that. It's not true. How is it not true? So why would you need a guy in the parking lot and hand him $1,200 and say, yes, I want him dead? What could I possibly do for you? I don't get it. What can I do? You're not even trying.
So he actually did tell her on the phone that he goes like, I will try to help you out. I'll try to cut you some slack here if you sign the townhouse back to me. And she refuses. So literally, this is like her one option to get a little bit of leeway from Michael, who's obviously gonna take her to court. And she refuses because I think in her head, like the townhouse was the one asset she had left. It was the one control tactic she had left. So yeah, that's kind of it in terms of how the case unfolded. I will obviously go into the trial in just a second, but first I just want to clear up a few different details that maybe were left unanswered. So obviously, if you hadn't gathered by now, it was definitely Dalia who was behind all this like taunting and calling anonymous tips to try to get Michael arrested for drugs. She also was the one who had someone else plant cocaine in her car. So as if Muhammad and Michael are not enough to juggle, she was also in touch with her other ex-boyfriend, a man named Mike Stanley. And she had given this whole sob story to Mike Stanley, as she tried to do with Muhammad, tried to wrap him around his finger, but this time it worked, and saying her husband does abuse her, and she's miserable, and she needs to get rid of him, like she'll do anything, and she's going to get all this money if she gets rid of it, and she'll share this money with him. So Mike's like, count me in, babe, like, let's do it. So Mike actually made a few anonymous phone calls himself, and Mike also was the one who planted the drugs in the car at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel because Dalia was in there with her husband at the time. So Mike was also helping Dalia with this whole thing. Another thing to mention is it is alleged that Dalia tried to kill him herself before she ever went to a hitman. So apparently Dalia had researched antifreeze and how to poison someone with antifreeze, and at first she put it in his tea and he spit it out immediately because he could just taste that something was off, and he was just like, ugh. But then apparently she went on to put it in his Starbucks drink. And Michael was horribly sick, violently sick for days and days after this, with like mouth ulcers and throwing up everywhere. And obviously he didn't know at the time, but one can assume that Dalia had put antifreeze inside of his drink. And when that didn't work, maybe she decided it was probably easier just to hire a hitman. Ooh, one other thing I wanted to say, you know that kind of random lawyer who gave Michael the kind of sketchy advice to just like hand over his townhouse to Dalia and put the deed in her name? Well, that lawyer was actually Mike Stanley, Dalia's ex-boyfriend, cosplaying as a lawyer. So yeah, Dalia was like, I have this lawyer for you, babe, like he's amazing. And it was her ex-boyfriend who put on a suit for the day and decided to be a lawyer for the day. So at this point, literally Dalia had stolen pretty much everything from Michael, a lot of his money, his home, and his pride. Michael was extremely embarrassed by all of this, and his ego was very bruised by this whole debacle, which I can understand. In 2011, Dalia was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the solicitation of first-degree murder of her husband, Michael Dippolito. The trial was interesting, actually, because her defense team kind of came out swinging with these bold claims that Michael was actually in on this whole thing. And it was Michael and Dalia and Mohammed who all together thought that this would be like a good ploy to get them on reality TV. But Michael kind of turned the tables on Dalia and actually like threw her under the bus, if that makes sense. But he was in on it the whole time, according to Dalia. I do think, to be honest, especially since that neighbor witnessed Michael pulling Dalia into the house by her hair and they were screaming, I do think there was some domestic abuse going on, and I don't want to sugarcoat that. Like, I don't want to blow past that. Obviously, Dalia is not a good person. Dalia is extremely greedy. Dalia is kind of the type who seems like she wants to just use men and manipulate men to get her way. But I don't know if Michael's a great... I'm not even going to say I don't know. I don't think Michael's a great guy either. And I think his past shows that. And I think the fact that he keeps leaving all these women and starting all these shady companies, and the fact that he clearly was physically abusive with his wife, whether or not he'll admit it, I tend to believe that, especially since there was a witness who saw it. So it's like both of these people were kind of crappy in their own ways. But obviously there's never an excuse for murder, especially this type of like pre-calculated murder. And Dalia did deserve to go to prison. But from a lot of the coverage I've seen of this case, the whole like domestic abuse conversation is really being left out. And I don't know how I feel about that. Because Dalia did say to multiple people that he was abusing her, and there was witness claims. So it's like, I don't know why we just stop talking about that when we cover this case. Like, I don't want to come across as a sympathizer with Dalia, but I don't want to put Michael on this pedestal either. So yeah, her lawyers kind of painted her out to be this sort of naive, like fame-hungry young girl who kind of got swept away in this whole ploy and kind of just went along with what Michael said, and now all the blame was being casted on her. But it didn't really work, and as I said, she got sentenced to 20 years in prison, and she was absolutely horrified by this. However, in 2011, that original sentence was actually disputed, and she had to go back to court because they found out that a juror on the original trial had actually had probably done, I can assume, research outside of the case, which they're not allowed to do if they're going to be a juror. They had apparently heard about this whole antifreeze Starbucks thing, and they shouldn't have known that because it wasn't brought into court as evidence. So because of this, that whole trial was thrown out and they had to do a new trial, which they did. And this time, the defense kind of took a different tactic where they essentially stated that the Boynton Beach Police Department had exploited her and entrapped her. So they brought forth the case of police entrapment. Like, Dalia is 100% responsible for this. No one forced her to do anything. No one forced her to say anything. But I don't know how I feel about the fact that police were like collaborating with cops. Did I mention this? Oh my God, I don't think I mentioned this. Guys, what the hell? This whole thing was being recorded and televised for the TV show Cops, which is a reality TV show back in the day. So Boynton Beach Police were working with and collaborating with the reality TV show Cops to film this whole thing and take down Dalia, obviously for legal purposes, but also for entertainment purposes, if we're being honest. The video of Dalia crying and screaming, no, my husband, like that went viral and she became a complete laughingstock. I don't know how I feel about police departments like working with TV shows to set up, because in a way, like I said, Dalia is 100% responsible for all this. No one held a gun to her head. But like, police did set up these very specific meetings and situations to entrap her, but they entrapped her within her own guilt. So like, she was guilty, but I just feel like there should be like a separation of church and state. Like, I don't know why the police are like thirsting out and trying to be on this reality TV show. And I can kind of see why the defense would take this strategy, and it actually seemed to work because they had a hung jury. It actually was declared a mistrial because there were certain people who served as jurors who couldn't make up their mind about her guilt, and so it was a hung jury. So it was declared a mistrial. I don't know if I stated, but the second trial was in 2016, and the third and final trial was in 2017. And in the third trial, they once again found Dalia to be guilty of the solicitation of first-degree murder of her husband. So her original sentencing of 20 years in prison was upheld. However, during all this time, since like her original arrest in like 2010, I think, it had been almost 8 years, and Dalia was actually serving house arrest during all of that time. And she actually, this is just a bit of a side note, but she actually had gotten pregnant and had a son during that time as well. So they considered that 8 years of house arrest to equate to 4 years in prison. So they knocked 4 years off of her sentence. And so she was only given 16 years in prison for the solicitation of murder. She's due to be released in 2032, and her son will be pretty much fully grown by that point. I think he'll be like 20 by that point. So she would have missed his entire childhood pretty much. And the only person, I mean, Michael obviously suffered in this. The person that I truly feel horrible for is actually this boy, because this boy was born into all this chaos without his consent. He didn't ask to be born into this. And then he had to grow up pretty much his entire childhood without his mother. So, but I mean, again, it's Dalia's fault. She was being selfish and greedy and murderous, and she shot herself in the foot with all of this. And so it's her own fault that she's serving this time in prison. So yeah, Michael is doing well. He has paid off all of his remaining restitution, so his probation is terminated, and he actually got engaged to a woman named Gloria in 2017, so he was able to like move on with his romantic life and find love again. But yeah, so he kind of had a relatively happy ending to this whole story, and he was able to get on reality TV. Honestly, both of them were able to become somewhat celebrities from all of this, you know, especially Dalia. She always wanted to be on TV. She always wanted to get her face out there. I'm sure this is not the way she ever expected to go viral, but she did. I'm sure if you listen to true crime, you will know how rare it is to hear a case where no one dies and the appropriate person was dealt out justice, and like everything was kind of peacefully dealt with before any crazy violence or murder happened. And it's just like such a relief to actually tell this case, and I want to know what you guys think. Again, let me know if you have any cases you want me to cover. Comment them below. I appreciate you guys so much for listening and watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. Make sure you stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time. And before you go, make sure you subscribe.